Delete it. Oh Jae-hoon's voice was barely above a whisper, which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying than a shout. He stood completely still in the shadow of the underground parking garage, his charcoal suit immaculate despite the fact that 3 men were bleeding on the concrete floor behind him. His dark eyes were fixed on Simone Bridges like a laser sight finding its target. Simone Bridges lowered her phone exactly 2 inches, looked this terrifyingly beautiful man dead in his eyes, and said, "No." The 2 bodyguards flanking Jae-hoon actually flinched. But to understand how a forensic accountant from Chicago ended up telling the most invisible, most powerful, most dangerous man in all of Korea to take several seats, we need to go back. Exactly 2 hours earlier, to the moment Simone Bridges made the single most consequential decision of her entire organized, color-coded, spreadsheet-loving life. Simone Bridges had a system. Everything in her life operated on a system. Her carry-on luggage was packed in color-coded compression bags. Her sole itinerary was broken into 45-minute blocks on a shared Google Calendar. Her work files were encrypted, backed up in triplicate, and organized by case number, date, and threat level. She was, by every measurable standard, the most prepared woman on the planet, which made it deeply personally offensive that Seoul was trying to kill her on day 1. She had landed at Incheon Airport that morning, taken the express train into the city like a sensible person, checked into her business hotel in Uido, unpacked her compression bags in exactly 11 minutes, and set out for a quick reconnaissance walk around the financial district before her meeting tomorrow with the Seoul branch of Meridian Global Consulting. 1 walk. That was all she asked for. 20 minutes of fresh air and mental preparation before she dove into 6 weeks of forensic accounting work that was supposed to be completely routine. Review the books of 3 Korean logistics companies, identify irregularities, file her report, collect her fee, and fly home to Chicago where her brother Darius was waiting. Except nothing about tonight turned out to be remotely routine. Simone had cut through a narrow alley behind the glittering towers of Uido's financial district, a shortcut her offline map had cheerfully recommended, when she heard it. A sound that every nerve ending in her body immediately recognized as deeply catastrophically wrong. 3 sharp, suppressed cracks. The kind of sound a staple gun makes, except louder, and followed by the kind of silence that swallows everything whole. A sensible person would have turned around. Simone Bridges pulled out her phone, activated the camera, and kept walking. Listen, she was a forensic accountant. Her entire career was built on the principle that when something wrong is happening, you document everything. You don't look away. You preserve the evidence. You build the case. That philosophy had served her beautifully in boardrooms and courtrooms across 4 continents. It had not previously been tested in a Korean underground parking garage at 11:30 at night. She rounded the corner of the alley and stopped dead. The parking garage entrance yawned open in front of her, its fluorescent lighting casting harsh white light across a scene that her brain spent approximately 3 seconds trying to process, and then simply gave up. 3 men on the ground, not moving. 4 men standing, perfectly still, and 1 man in the center. He wasn't tall in the way that announces itself. He wasn't broad or physically imposing. He was lean, controlled, and dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Simone's monthly rent in Chicago. His face was angular and devastatingly composed. The face of a man who had never in his life experienced a single moment of emotional chaos. His right hand was lowering a weapon with the casual economy of motion of someone setting down a pen after signing a document. Simone's phone camera clicked. Oh no, she hadn't meant to take the photo. Her thumb had been hovering over the button automatically because that is what forensic accountants do. They document. It was pure muscle memory. But the flash, the tiny, treacherous, completely avoidable flash. The man's head turned. His eyes found her in the darkness with the immediate, unerring precision of a thermal scope. And Simone Bridges, who had never in her life run from a problem, very seriously considered running from this one. She did not run. She stood her ground, heart slamming against her ribs like it was trying to escape on its own, and watched him walk toward her with slow, measured steps. His bodyguards fanned out around him. The fluorescent light caught his face fully as he stopped 6 feet from her. He was unfairly, almost offensively handsome. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that held all the warmth of a January lake. A mouth pressed into a flat, dangerous line. "Delete it," he said. And Simone said no. "Are you already obsessed? Because I am. Drop a comment right now and tell me, was Simone brave or absolutely crazy for saying no? And make sure you hit that subscribe button on Soul Sauce right now so you don't miss a single second of this story. The silence that followed Simone's refusal was the loudest silence she had ever experienced in her life. One of the bodyguards actually reached inside his jacket. "Don't," the man said quietly, and the bodyguard's hand stopped moving immediately, which told Simone everything she needed to know about the hierarchy of authority in this particular parking garage. The man studied her with those impossible dark eyes. His gaze moved from her face to her phone to her face again, precise and unhurried, like he was reading a document and finding the numbers deeply interesting. "You are not Korean," he said. "Brilliant observation," Simone replied. Her voice came out steadier than she had any right to expect. "Chicago, born and raised. You are not a journalist. Forensic accountant." Something shifted almost imperceptibly in his expression. "You documented a crime scene." "I document everything," Simone said. "It's a lifestyle. That photograph will get you killed." "That photograph," Simone said, her chin lifting slightly, "is already uploaded to an encrypted cloud server with a 72-hour dead man's switch. If I don't personally log in and reset it every 3 days, it goes automatically to 3 separate recipients. So killing me would be the least efficient solution to your problem." That was a complete and total lie. The photo was sitting in her camera roll. She had no encrypted server. She didn't even have international roaming activated yet, because she had planned to sort it out tomorrow morning between 8 and 8:45 a.m., as per her itinerary. But Simone Bridges had built an entire career on reading financial lies, which meant she also knew exactly how to tell one. The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Who are you?" "Simone Bridges," she said. "And you are?" The 2 bodyguards exchanged a look of pure disbelief, as if no one in the history of their employment had ever asked their boss to introduce himself in a crime scene. The man's jaw shifted slightly. "Oh Jae-hoon." Simone filed the name immediately into her mental database and felt a cold thread of recognition pull tight in her chest. Oh Jae-hoon. She knew that name, not from news reports, because Oh Jae-hoon did not appear in news reports. Not from police databases, because Oh Jae-hoon did not appear in those either. She knew it from 3 months ago, sitting in a federal holding room in Chicago watching her little brother Darius read from a prepared statement through a cracked lip and a split eyebrow, naming the organization that had framed him for financial crimes he never committed. The Shim Network. And the one name Darius had whispered to her afterward, the name the federal prosecutor had gone pale at, the name everyone in that building pretended they hadn't heard. Oh Jae-hoon, the ghost, the man the Shim Network feared above every other enemy they had. Simone's entire body recalibrated in approximately 4 seconds. She squared her shoulders, crossed her arms, and looked Oh Jae-hoon directly in his devastatingly dangerous face. "Actually," she said, "I think we need to talk." They did not talk in the parking garage. They talked in the back of an armored vehicle so heavily reinforced that Simone could feel the weight of it in how it absorbed the road. The windows were blacked out. 2 bodyguards sat in front. Oh Jae-hoon sat across from her, perfectly composed, one ankle resting on his opposite knee, watching her with the focused patience of a man who had absolutely nowhere else to be. Simone cataloged everything. The interior, the route turns, the approximate travel time, the security team's communication patterns. She was terrified, and she was absolutely not going to let him know that. "Talk," Jae-hoon said. Simone pulled out the small notebook she kept in her blazer pocket, because she was a woman with systems, and flipped it open to a page of handwritten notes. 3 months ago, my brother Darius Bridges, 26 years old, software developer, 0 criminal history, was recruited by a Seoul-based firm called Meridian Global Consulting for a data architecture contract. He thought he was building a logistics database. He was actually building the financial routing infrastructure for an international money laundering network operated by the Shim Network. Jae-hoon's expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. She could feel it like a change in atmospheric pressure. When federal investigators started closing in, Simone continued, her voice tight with controlled fury, the Shim network needed a fall guy. They planted $4.2 million in fraudulent transfers in Darius's personal work files, wiped their own footprints, and handed him to the FBI with a bow on top. He is currently awaiting trial in Chicago. His public defender has the legal firepower of a damp paper towel. He is facing 40 years. She closed the notebook. I have spent 3 months following the money trail the FBI missed. Every path leads back to one entity, Meridian Global Consulting, the same firm I was hired to audit starting tomorrow morning. Jae-hoon was quiet for a moment. You took a job with Meridian, he said slowly. I took a job inside the organization that destroyed my brother's life, yes. Simone said. I was going to spend 6 weeks pulling their books apart from the inside and hand everything to the federal prosecutor. Then tonight I accidentally photographed the one man in Asia that the Shim network is actually afraid of. She tilted her head slightly. So, here we are. Jae-hoon studied her for a long time. The vehicle moved through the city, turning in ways Simone was mentally cataloging even as she held his gaze. You built a dead man's switch, he said. Absolutely, said Simone. He watched her face. No, you didn't. Simone kept her expression completely neutral through sheer force of professional will. A ghost of something crossed Jae-hoon's face. Not quite amusement. More like the intellectual acknowledgement that he was dealing with something unexpected. The Shim network, he said quietly, has been dismantling my operations for 18 months. They move money through shell companies faster than my analysts can trace them. 3 of my people are dead. They tried to take my shipping network last month and nearly succeeded. I have been looking for their financial architecture for 6 months. He looked at her notebook. You have it. Most of it, Simone said. I need 6 weeks inside Meridian to get the rest. I need access to their internal servers, which requires physical presence. I also need somebody to make sure I walk out of that building alive when I'm done. Because the moment I pull those files, every alarm in the Shim network goes off. She leaned forward slightly. You want to destroy the Shim network. I want my brother home. You have security resources I don't have. I have financial intelligence you've been chasing for 18 months. This is the most mutually beneficial arrangement you will encounter this decade. Jae-hoon said nothing for what felt like a very long time. Then he said, You are either the most strategic woman I have ever met or the most reckless. Both, said Simone. Obviously. Wait, did Simone just outnegotiate the most powerful man in Korea in the back of an armored vehicle? Comment right now and tell me. Are you Team Simone or do you think Jae-hoon has another move coming? Like this video and subscribe to Soul Sauce because this story is just getting started. Jae-hoon's compound was in Songbukdong, nested into the hillside north of the city where old money and absolute power had been quietly coexisting for generations. The house itself looked from the outside like a traditional Hanok estate, all sweeping curved rooflines and stone garden walls. Inside it was something else entirely. Clean lines, controlled spaces, technology embedded into every surface like a second nervous system. It was the most beautiful and unsettling home Simone had ever been in. She was given a room that was larger than her entire Chicago apartment, shown the private bathroom, handed a clean change of clothes by a silent staff member, and told by one of the bodyguards in clipped Korean that dinner would be available in 30 minutes. Simone sat on the edge of the bed, pressed her hands flat against her knees, and allowed herself exactly 90 seconds of being completely terrified. Then she stood up, washed her face, changed her clothes, and went to find the Wi-Fi password. She found it written on a small card next to the bedside lamp, because apparently even terrifying crime lords needed their guests to have internet access. She connected immediately, opened her encrypted work drive, and pulled up everything she had on Meridian Global Consulting. There was a soft knock at the door. Come in, she said, eyes still on her screen. The door opened. She expected a bodyguard. Jae-hoon walked in carrying 2 cups of tea, which was so completely incongruous with the parking garage version of him that Simone actually forgot what she was typing for a full 3 seconds. He set one cup on the desk beside her without comment and looked at her screen. His expression shifted slightly when he saw the Meridian financial architecture she had mapped across her drive. 18 months of shell company structures, routing patterns and flag transactions, all color-coded and cross-referenced with meticulous, almost aggressive precision. He pulled a chair from the corner of the room, sat down and said, "Show me." Simone showed him. For 2 hours they sat at that desk, and Simone walked him through everything she had built. The layers of shell companies, the routing patterns through 3 different currency markets. The moment the architecture changed 3 years ago, becoming more sophisticated, more hidden, which she had tracked back to a single new hire at Meridian. A financial engineer whose previous employment history had been neatly scrubbed. Jae-hoon was completely silent throughout, but his focus was total, leaning forward slightly as she walked through each layer, his eyes moving across the data with the speed of someone who understood exactly what they were looking at. "This routing pattern," he said, pointing to a cluster of transactions on her screen. "This is what moved money out of my shipping subsidiary last March." "Yes," Simone said. "And the same pattern moved it into an account registered under a shell company called Haywin Logistics, which on paper looks completely clean. But Haywin Logistics shares a registered address with 4 other shell companies, 2 of which appear in your subsidiary's vendor list." Jae-hoon went very still. "They were billing my own company," he said quietly, "for services rendered by companies they controlled. For approximately 16 months, Simone said, to the tune of about $34 million. The silence that followed was the particular quality of silence that precedes something significant. Jae-hoon stood up slowly, walked to the window, stood there looking out at the dark garden for a long moment. When he turned around, his face was composed, but his eyes were doing something complicated. "How did you find this?" he said, "when my entire financial team did not?" Simone picked up her teacup. "Because your financial team was looking for fraud. I was looking for a frame-up. Those are 2 completely different architectures. Fraud hides the money. A frame-up moves the money in a pattern that looks exactly like legitimate crime. You have to read it backwards." Jae-hoon looked at her with an expression she couldn't entirely categorize. "You start at Meridian tomorrow," he said. 8:45 a.m., Simone confirmed. "I have a whole itinerary." Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. "Of course you do." Meridian Global Consulting occupied the top 4 floors of a glass tower in Uedo's financial district that practically radiated corporate legitimacy from every surface. Marble lobby, smiling receptionists, tasteful abstract art. The kind of office that worked very hard to look like absolutely nothing interesting happened there. Simone walked in at 8:47 a.m., 2 minutes behind schedule because Jae-hoon's driver had taken a different route than she anticipated, which she made a note to address later. She was introduced to the Meridian team as an external auditor brought in for routine regulatory compliance review. Her contact was a polished, aggressively cheerful man named Director Lim Sung-jae, who shook her hand too firmly and smiled too widely and had the eyes of someone doing constant mental arithmetic. Simone smiled back with equal warmth and began immediately cataloging every discrepancy she could see from the lobby. The security desk logged physical access but not digital access. The server room was on floor 41, but the IT team's badges only accessed floors 38 through 40. The accounting department was separated from the rest of the office by a glass partition with a subtle but distinct one-way tint. Classic compartmentalization. Classic controlled information flow. She was given a workstation on floor 39 and access to what they wanted her to see, which was 3 years of immaculately maintained general ledger entries that were about as representative of actual financial activity as a movie set facade. Beautiful. Completely hollow. Simone opened her first spreadsheet and got to work. She spent the first 2 days doing exactly what they expected her to do. Reviewing the visible books. Asking routine questions. Being thorough and professional and entirely non-threatening. Building trust. Building access. Director Lim checked on her twice a day with a cup of coffee she didn't drink and questions designed to gauge exactly how deep she was digging. "Everything aligning well so far?" he asked on the second afternoon, leaning against her workstation with practiced casualness. "Beautifully," Simone said. not looking up from her screen. Your amortization schedules are immaculate. Whoever manages your fixed asset register should be very proud. Director Lim relaxed visibly. Simone made a note. On the third morning she arrived early, before most of the team, and used the 11-minute window before the IT monitoring system ran its daily initialization check to install a passive data mapping tool on her workstation. It didn't access anything it wasn't authorized to access. It simply mapped the architecture of every system her workstation touched during normal operation. By Thursday afternoon, she had a skeleton key to the entire network topology. She texted Jae-hoon a single word. Confirmed. His response came back in 4 seconds. Good. She was getting somewhere. What she didn't know was that somewhere was getting closer to her too. I need you to comment right now because things are about to get dangerous. Are you watching Simone work or what? This woman is operating on a completely different level. Subscribe to Soul Sauce and hit that like button because the next part of this story is going to break your heart a little bit before it fixes it. It was Friday evening when everything cracked open. Simone was working late. The office emptied out around her, when her passive mapping tool flagged something it shouldn't have found. A data packet moving through the network in a routing pattern she recognized immediately because she had spent 3 months building a map of exactly this pattern. Except this packet wasn't going to an external shim network server. It was going to an internal address. Inside the Jae-hoon compound. Simone sat very still for a moment, the blue light of her screen reflecting off her face in the darkened office. Then she picked up her phone and called Jae-hoon directly. He answered on the second ring. There is a shim network data feed going into your compound's internal network, she said without preamble. Someone inside your operation is receiving information from Meridian. Not sending it, receiving it. Which means the shim network isn't just watching your operation from outside. They have somebody feeding information in. The silence on the other end lasted exactly 4 seconds. How long? Jae-hoon said. Based on the packet architecture, at least 4 months. Another silence. Come back to the compound, he said. Now. I need 20 more minutes to. Simone. His voice dropped into a register that was not a request. She saved her files, packed her bag, and was in the car in 8 minutes. The compound was different when she arrived. The energy was compressed, controlled, the way air feels before a storm. Jae-hoon was in his operations room, surrounded by 4 of his senior analysts, when she walked in. He looked up immediately and crossed the room toward her, which given the number of people watching felt oddly significant. Show them what you found, he said. She plugged in her drive and walked the room through the data feed. The analysts were good. She could see them moving through the implications faster than she finished explaining them, their faces going progressively tighter. The receiving address, one of the analysts said. That's registered to the administrative server. Correspondence management. The room went very quiet. Everyone understood what that meant before anyone said it. Who manages correspondence? Jae-hoon said, his voice absolutely flat. The analysts exchanged a look. Deputy Director Hwang. One of them said quietly. Jae-hoon didn't move, didn't change expression. But something in the atmosphere of the room shifted in a way that made Simone instinctively want to take a step back. Find him, Jae-hoon said. Deputy Director Hwang was found 20 minutes later attempting to leave the compound through a service entrance with a data drive in his jacket pocket. The confrontation was brief and controlled in the way that only happens when the person doing the confronting is operating at absolute zero emotional temperature. Simone watched from the doorway of the operations room, her arms crossed, her heart going faster than she would like to admit. Jae-hoon walked back into the operations room alone 20 minutes later. He stopped in the middle of the room. His team watched him carefully. He turned to Simone. The drive contained the full architecture of our network security system, he said, scheduled for transmission to the shim network tomorrow morning. With it, they could have dismantled everything we have built in 3 days. Simone exhaled slowly. The data feed from Meridian, she said. They were coaching him, feeding him exactly what to look for and when to move it. Yes. They knew I was here, she said. The timing is not a coincidence. They escalated because I'm inside Meridian. They were trying to neutralize your operation before I could pull the files. Jae-hoon looked at her steadily. Which means you are running out of time inside Meridian. I need 4 more days, Simone said. Maximum. I have the network topology. I just need to physically access the server on floor 41 to pull the source files. That requires getting past a security system your badge doesn't authorize, Jae-hoon said. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. I know the building, he said. I owned it 8 years ago. Simone stared at him. You're serious? The server room on floor 41 has a secondary access panel behind the emergency cooling unit. It was installed during the original construction and was never included in the formal security schematics when the building was sold. Simone pulled out her notebook. Talk, she said. She went in on Tuesday morning. Simone had spent the weekend preparing with a focus that bordered on spiritual. She reviewed the floor plans Jae-hoon provided 3 times. She practiced the exact sequence of movements she would need in the server room. She laid out everything she needed in order across her desk and packed it into her bag with the precision of a surgeon. She also spent approximately 45 minutes on Sunday evening doing none of that. She spent it sitting in the compound's stone garden while Jae-hoon walked her through the building layout for the 3rd time, and somehow they ended up talking about something else entirely. About Chicago winters and how Seoul traffic sounds different from Chicago traffic in a way she couldn't fully explain. About her brother Darius and how he used to debug code by narrating it out loud to their grandmother's cat. About the fact that Jae-hoon had not left Seoul in 4 years. He told her that quietly, looking at the garden. 4 years is a long time, she said. The work doesn't stop, he said. The work, Simone said carefully, is not the same as the life. He looked at her sideways. She looked back. The garden was very quiet around them. Neither of them said anything else about it. But on Monday morning there was a proper cup of coffee waiting at her workstation. Not the compound's battery acid espresso. An actual pour-over from the specialty cafe 3 blocks away, with a post-it note that said, in English, floor 41. You're ready. Simone looked at that note for longer than she should have. Then she squared her shoulders and got to work. Tuesday, 8:52 a.m. She cleared security at Meridian with her usual smile and settled at her workstation. Spent 2 hours doing completely normal audit work. Chatted with Director Lim about quarterly amortization. Asked the IT coordinator a casual question about server maintenance schedules that had absolutely nothing suspicious about it and gave her the exact window she needed. 11:40 a.m. IT team's floor 41 maintenance window. 40 minutes. She stood up, collected her bag, and told the junior analyst across from her she was heading to floor 40 for a document archive review. Then she took the stairs to 41. The server room was cold and loud with the constant breathing of machinery. Simone moved along the back wall, counting units until she reached the emergency cooling section. Found the secondary panel exactly where Jae-hoon had described it. Her hands were steady. She had made herself practice this until her hands would be steady. She was in. The source files were buried under 4 layers of directory structure. She had the address from her network mapping. She plugged in her drive and started the transfer. 38 minutes remaining. The transfer bar climbed. The server room hummed around her. Somewhere above her, the normal business day of a criminal enterprise was proceeding as scheduled. Simone counted her breathing. The transfer hit 60% when the door to the server room opened. She flattened herself behind the cooling unit, every nerve ending going electric. Footsteps. 1 person, moving with purpose along the main server row. She heard them stop, heard the distinct sound of a keyboard, heard something that made the bottom drop out of her stomach. A data purge command being entered. They were wiping the servers. They knew. Simone did not think about it. She pulled her phone, sent a single text to Jae-hoon, purge, now, and stepped out from behind the cooling unit. Stop what you're doing, she said. Director Lim Sung-jae turned around. He was not smiling anymore. Oh my God. Comment your reaction right now. Did you see that coming? I need to know. Like this video immediately and subscribe to Soul Sauce because we are not done and what happens next will have you completely losing your mind. Director Lim looked at Simone with the expression of a man removing a mask he had been wearing for a very long time. "Ms. Bridges," he said pleasantly. "I wondered how long it would take." "Step away from the terminal," Simone said. He smiled. "You have about 90 seconds of data on that drive. Whatever you pulled before I started the purge is incomplete. It will not be enough." "Step away from the terminal," she said again. "You are a very impressive woman," Lim said, taking a step toward her instead. "We have been watching you for 2 weeks. We allowed you access to see exactly how far you would get. You got further than anyone expected." He took another step. "We also know," he said, "that O.J. Hoon is involved, which means this was never really about an audit." Simone did not move. Her heart was hammering. The transfer drive was still in the server. She needed 30 more seconds. "My brother," she said, keeping him talking, keeping his attention on her face. "Darius Bridges. You framed him." Lim paused. "Collateral infrastructure," he said, with a dismissiveness that ignited something cold and absolute in Simone's chest. "He was a useful architect. His profile was useful as a fall position. Nothing personal." "It was extremely personal," Simone said. Her phone vibrated once in her pocket. Jae-hoon's people were in the building. She needed 15 more seconds. "You know what your problem is?" Simone said, crossing her arms. "Your shell company architecture is beautiful. Truly. Whoever designed it is gifted. But you made one mistake. You used the same beneficial ownership registration format across every entity. Same field order. Same capitalization convention. Same date formatting. It's a fingerprint. It's in every document and it ties every shell company in your network to a single originating legal template. I found the template. I found the lawyer who made it. I found the original client engagement letter." Lim's smile faded. "That," Simone said, "is what is on this drive. Not just the routing architecture. The originating documentation. The whole thing unravels from there." The transfer drive beeped softly behind her. Complete. The server room door burst open. What followed was not elegant. It was loud and fast and involved significantly more people than the server room was designed to accommodate. Jae-hoon came through the door himself, which Simone had not expected, followed by 4 of his security team and 2 individuals she would later learn were Korean Financial Intelligence Unit investigators who had been building a case against the SHIM network for 2 years and had been waiting for exactly the kind of originating documentation she had just pulled. Director Lim was restrained with the comprehensive efficiency of people who had been wanting to do it for a long time. Simone stood in the middle of the server room and breathed. Jae-hoon crossed to her immediately. He did the thing he had done in the parking garage on the night they met. That rapid, thorough assessment, checking her face, her hands, looking for damage. "I'm fine," she said. "You stepped out from behind the cooling unit at a man who works for the SHIM network," he said, his voice carrying a low, controlled intensity she was starting to recognize as the version of him that existed when he was genuinely alarmed. "I needed 30 more seconds on the transfer," she said. "Simone." "It worked," she said. "I got everything." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something she had not seen him do before. He exhaled. A real, full exhale, the kind that releases something. "Yes," he said quietly. "You did." The legal process moved fast once the documentation hit the Financial Intelligence Unit's case file. Faster than anyone expected and slower than Simone could stand. She spent the first week after Meridian back at the compound, working with the FIU analysts to authenticate and organize the files, translating the financial architecture into language that would hold up in both Korean and American federal court. She worked 15-hour days. She drank too much of the compound's terrible espresso and not enough of the good coffee, which Jae-hoon began leaving at her workstation every morning without being asked. She noticed he never asked anyone else to do it. On the 8th day, her phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was her mother. Darius's charges had been dropped. The federal prosecutor had received the originating documentation from the Korean FIU the previous afternoon. The legal template, the beneficial ownership fingerprint, the direct tie between Meridian's shell architecture and the fraudulent transfers in Darius's files. It was overwhelming, unambiguous, and completely exonerating. Darius Bridges was going home. Simone sat on the edge of her bed in the compound's guest room, her mother's voice filling her ear, and she pressed her free hand over her mouth and cried. She did not cry loudly. She was not a loud crier, but she cried with the deep, shaking relief of someone who had been holding something almost too heavy to carry for 3 months and had just been allowed to set it down. When she came downstairs 40 minutes later, composed and dry-eyed and deeply in need of coffee, Jae-hoon was standing in the corridor outside the operations room. He looked at her face. "Your brother," he said. It wasn't a question. "Going home," she said. He nodded once. There was something in his expression that she had learned to read over the past weeks. Something that happened when he was feeling something he did not have the architecture to easily express. "Good," he said quietly. "Thank you," Simone said. "For Darius. For all of it." He was quiet for a moment. "You did not need me," he said. "You would have found another way. I would have found a slower, much more dangerous, significantly less well-resourced way," Simone said. "That is not the same as not needing you." He looked at her. She looked back. The corridor was very quiet. "Your flight home," he said. "When did you book it?" Simone had booked it 3 days ago. Wednesday morning. 7 a.m. return to Chicago, which she had chosen specifically because 7 a.m. departures required you to be at the airport by 5, which meant leaving the compound by 4, which meant there was no reasonable opportunity for a prolonged goodbye. She had a system. "Wednesday," she said. "Wednesday," he repeated. "Yes." He nodded, looked at the middle distance for a moment. "Seoul in October," he said carefully, "is very different from Seoul in August. The light changes." Simone looked at him. "I have cases," she said. "I know. I have a life in Chicago. I know. I make very detailed itineraries," she said. "And long distance is extremely hard to schedule. I imagine," he said, "that you would find a system." Simone pressed her lips together against something that wanted very badly to become a smile. "Your coffee," she said, "is absolutely terrible. I know where to get better coffee," Jae-hoon said. And this time the corner of his mouth moved. Definitely moved. "There is a place in Insadong. They open at 7. I have never taken anyone there." Simone was quiet for a moment. "What time is it now?" she said. 6:53, he said. She looked at him. He looked at her. "I'll get my coat," said Simone Bridges. 6 weeks later, Darius Bridges was sitting at his mother's kitchen table in Chicago, eating her cooking and narrating a debugging problem to her cat, which had not changed at all in his absence. He was also reading a message from his sister. Extended the Seoul contract. New client. Complex case. Probably 3 months minimum. Tell Mama I'll call Sunday. Also tell her the Korean coffee is incredible and she would love it. Darius grinned. "You met somebody, didn't you?" The typing indicator appeared and disappeared 3 times. "I have a system," Simone finally sent back. Darius laughed so hard the cat left the room. 3,000 miles away, in a coffee shop in Insadong that opened at 7, Jae-hoon looked across a small wooden table at a woman who was simultaneously drinking the best pour-over in Seoul and making notes in a color-coded notebook about an entirely new case. She was the most organized, most infuriating, most remarkable person he had ever met. She looked up and caught him looking. "You're staring," she said. "I'm assessing," he said. "Is there a difference?" "Yes," he said. "Staring is involuntary." Simone held his gaze for a moment. Then she smiled. Fully. The real one. The one that had nothing to do with negotiation or strategy or professional composure. Jae-hoon decided that was the most dangerous thing he had ever seen in his life. He didn't look away. "If this story moved you even a little bit, I need you to do 3 things right now. Like this video. Subscribe to Soul Sauce so you are the first to know when the next story drops. And comment below. Team Simone, Team Jae-hoon, or Team both because they deserve everything. Tell me your favorite moment from this entire story. Was it the parking garage? The server room? The coffee shop? The corridor conversation? I am reading every single comment and I want to know exactly what broke you open. Simone and Jae-hoon's story is not finished. There are more cases, more enemies, more early mornings in that coffee shop in Insadong. And something tells me Darius is going to visit Seoul and cause absolute chaos. If you want to see what happens next, make sure Soul Sauce knows you are here. Subscribe, like, comment, share this with every person you know who deserves a good story today. I will see you in the next one.